Welcome back to another edition of the Wolverine.com podcast, Balas and Skene show here at the Wolverine.com. So with me, five-time Big Ten champion Doug Skene, former NFL player with the New England Patriots and starter for Bill Parcells. Just wanted to give you the credit you deserve there, Skene. So that's a lot. So
it is a lot. Yeah.
I think you need to put some more stuff on your walls.
It's all my football stuff's kind of up here. My Patriot helmet is up there, and my Michigan helmet is up there. So
you're a humble
around.
guy. You're a humble guy, and if it were me, I would have a big picture of me with my 5 Big Ten rings like this. So anyway, 49-0 beating of Michigan State that was really never in doubt. I said this in my column. They could have given Michigan State their defensive signals, and Michigan State wouldn't have scored anyway, and said, no, okay.
There you go, poking the bear, Balas.
It is what it is. Well, when you sit there before the game and you say, for the safety of our players, if they know our signals, and we are chagrined by this, and I'm like, okay, here's the thing. First of all, in talking to people, you haven't changed your signals in 4 years. So everybody in the Big Ten probably has them, number one. Okay, number two, it wasn't going to matter if they had your signals or not. As Harlan Barnett, and I give him credit, Michigan State's interim head coach said, you know what? No excuses. We send our quarterback to the sideline. We've done it before because people are stealing our signs in game, which is completely legal, obviously. And we'll talk about the whole Harbaugh saga here after this. But first, let's talk about that complete ass kicking. And, it wasn't in what I wrote, it wasn't the typical bludgeoning where you're like, okay, you're controlling the line of scrimmage on offense and just running it down their throats and, like men against boys up there. It took a good performance from J.J. McCarthy to keep drives alive. There were 5 long third downs that they had to convert on their first 5 drives, I believe. But when it was 14-0 and you saw how inept Michigan State was on offense, you knew that this was going to be a long day for them.
The game was over arguably at 21-0.
Yeah,
for sure. I based on what I saw from Michigan State's offense, it was just like they obviously have an offensive problem in quarterback issues, offensive line issues, consistency at running back. They just don't have playmakers anywhere on that offensive side of the ball that causes defense problems. And that was the case last night. The game was over early, and Michigan just kept their foot on the gas until the very end, no matter what unit was on the field. And that was, probably the least talented Michigan State team I've seen in 30 years in this rivalry. Even going back to the early 2000s, Balas, when we beat Michigan State 49-3 in Ann Arbor. They had Drew Stanton, and they had a linebacker, and they had some other players in that team that were pretty doggone good football players. This Michigan State team doesn't have a whole lot. So I think even if the Coach Tucker thing didn't happen and he's still intact, boy, I don't know that the result of that football game is much different. So it was just an imbalance. And I had said going into the game, Michigan State always finds a way to rise up and play way above their heads in this football game. And I was wrong because they just don't have that much talent to rise up to. If there was one area that Michigan State kind of held water a little bit, was their defensive line against our running game. Like you said, I think we probably could have been more effective blocking the front at times. We were just 1 or 2 guys missing from a big run up the middle. Corum was really close, and so was Edwards. If there's a bright spot, that was about it. And so, Michigan State's just not very good this year.
Yeah, and that's a shame. Real quick, there were a lot of Michigan fans in that stadium, and I gotta say, a lot of them I think got them through the Game Time app, Skene, and we promoted that heavily because tickets were coming down. Game Time is the place to go for your last second ticket needs. I went to a Lions game earlier this year. I thought, early in the week, I thought tickets are $250. I'm not paying $250 to see the Lions play. By Friday, I go to Game Time. They're way down. I sit there on the goal line with my son, had an unbelievable time. It's not supposed to be tough and stressful to get tickets, guys. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you, and it has certainly worked for me and for thousands of Michigan fans that infiltrated Michigan State's Spartan Stadium on Saturday night. So there are killer deals on last-minute tickets. Best price guarantee as well, guys, so you can stop stressing over the tickets, start getting hyped for the fun you will have. So, you know what? If I were still a fan, Skene, I would have been on Game Time, going to that game probably. I don't like going to East Lansing. It's not a fun experience for me, and there's too much vitriol, and I think that a lot of that came with Mark D'Antonio. But if I had, Game Time would have been it for me. Flash deals and last-minute tickets. I got a flash deal for the Lions tickets where, okay, they pop up and it says, this is a great deal for you, and we're going to give you an opportunity. And I got tickets that I would have gotten probably for 2/3 the more at StubHub or something like that. So easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. Great seat views that they show you, lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, everything else. So it is the place for last minute ticket deals. Game Time app, download it and use the Wolverine code, Wolverine, and get 20% off your first purchase. Game Time will credit you 100%, 10% of the difference if you find a better price on tickets. So Game Time app, download it, folks. Trust me, that is the way to go. So a lot of Michigan fans did, and it was fun to hear them chanting. It was great. It's great to be a Michigan Wolverine after the game. Skene, the coolest part to me was when Jaden McBurrows gets a pick. One of the kids that was assaulted in the tunnel last year. Yep. Got a couple tackles. He played well even before that, and then all of a sudden he gets a pick, and I'm like, all right, this is karma talking here.
Yeah, it certainly felt like that way, right? And I know the Michigan team before the game was saying that, they had moved on from the incident in the tunnel last year, that they were focusing on the football, but come on, Balas, you know as well as I do that this was actively in the minds of this football team. And again, going up to the game, I had said that all that stuff needs to be kept behind the locker room doors. What you say amongst the team is best kept behind the doors. I think they did a nice job of that. But the way the defense played all the way through that interception, there was obviously a tie-in to the emotion and the way that thing ended last year in Ann Arbor. It carried over into last night, and Michigan certainly made themselves present early and often on that football field right through to the very end.
Yeah, they sure did. Now, I want to talk about McCarthy a little bit more because there are some games in which your quarterback is the guy. And I wrote this in the report card. I said, let's make no mistake about it. This is J.J. McCarthy's offense. This is not the offensive lines. And I understand it's a team game. It's not the offensive line's offense like we could say the last couple of years, or Blake Corum's like last year. A couple of years ago, you had a game manager in Cade McNamara, right? But J.J. McCarthy is really the straw stir the drink here. And some of the plays he made to get away from pressure, number one, there was a play where they brought that double A gap blitz. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Somehow he Houdinis his way out of there, keeps his eyes downfield, and throws a strike to the tight ends, who, by the way, were unbelievable. Jim Harbaugh said, this might be the best game for tight ends ever. He's prone to do that. A little hyperbole. However,
that may not be hyperbole. I mean, come on. The two tight ends, I was sitting there watching the game at a wedding last night, looking at my iPad, and I'm watching this and I'm watching this. I'm like, this is unbelievable. These tight ends might set a record for tight end offense in a game. Certainly in this rivalry game, there's got to be some stat out there. They had to have had a record night.
Yeah, Barner was fantastic, and Colston Loveland. But the way he is stepping up in the pocket and avoiding pressure and he's got, those great quarterbacks have that sense, right? Okay, something's coming over here, but it's not going to detract them from the task at hand. Keeping their eyes downfield, using their feet. That one, like that I was just mentioning, was unbelievable. He should have been dead to rights, and Harbaugh talked about that. He keeps his eyes downfield, throws a strike, and the way he's throwing the ball right now and where he's putting it, that ball that sailed over Cal Halliday's head to Colston Loveland, that kid's probably still hearing the buzz this morning. He better go get his ear checked. But kid's playing at an elite level.
He is. It's impressive to watch. And you know what, Balas? It's, coming into the season, we talked about expectations for what Michigan needs to do to take this to the next level and compete in these playoffs. I think this is kind of what it looks like, right?
Yes.
I'm an old greedy offensive lineman. I want to see us run 30, 40 times and grind out that front and physically demoralize them. But coming into this season, we needed a more expansive, dynamic, diverse passing offense. And I think this is what it looks like. And it's probably pretty awesome to watch when you have a quarterback who stands in the pocket and then has the mental and physical toughness. When pressure starts to move around him, he keeps his eyes down the field and delivers an incredibly accurate football. And so I don't know how to describe this for people that have never sat in the pocket of a Division One college football game as a quarterback. You're looking down the field. You have to see what's going on down there, and they're enormously huge human beings coming to destroy you, and you cannot take your eyes and look down here at your pressure, because if you do that, you're dead in the water. You're no longer an effective quarterback as much as you need to be. It takes a certain level of guts and toughness to stand in there and do that, and he does this really, really well,
Yeah.
and not everybody can. The only thing I would say, every time we see JJ curl out, run around, escape pressure, see the stuff down the field, the only thing I would say is there is a time, and there was one play last
Yep.
night. I think it was the first quarter.
Yep.
There is a time on second down, things aren't going well. Can you just throw it out of bounds? We'll get this on third down. We took a big loss on that play. I think we got the third down on the next play
They
because
did.
it was one of those nights. But I just think that if there's one time, and I'm sure that Coach Harbaugh and his staff are talking to these quarterbacks about this, it's okay. Every once in a while, it's okay to just have an incompletion. So I think if there's just one criticism of JJ, I do think he gets a little greedy at times, but then he turns around and slings the ball for some big first down or a touchdown. And I'm like, okay, I can't criticize the kid because he can do this stuff, but time will tell. Can you do it against better defenses than that?
Yes, and this is, everybody says, well, if you look at how Michigan's beating teams like the past couple of years, Georgia would have crushed them, or Georgia would have done this. We look at the scores now and what they just did to Michigan State. They're doing it at an elite level. I don't care who the competition is. Now, there will be bigger tests and tougher tests. Although watching Penn State and Ohio State, I didn't see anything from those teams that scared the hell out of me. Now, they are good football teams and they have good defenses and much better than they will see from from most teams this year, obviously, or any team.
Mhm.
But to me, like you said, this is next level stuff. And I am concerned. You know what? Donovan Edwards, 6 carries, 14 yards. Blake Corum averaged 3.9 yards per carry. Granted, this is a tough, physical, whatever. Michigan State front. Their front seven is the probably the strength of their team, which isn't really saying much. But I'm concerned. I am about the running game, and I think it needs to be better if they want to win a championship. Am I wrong?
Well, no, I think you're right. It needs to get better, and there were a few plays last night where I saw a lot of good combinations, a lot of good starts of a block, and then a linebacker scrapes over, and we just don't quite catch him. And that's
Yeah.
the guy that makes the tackle for Corum for 3 or 4 yards. But beyond him, he's in the secondary and he's running loose. That happened multiple times, and it's happened multiple times in all these games. I think they're getting better, Balas. The consistency again with Ladarius at left and Barnard at right and the rest of that offensive line, throw in the tight ends, and then Bredesen and short yardage and goal line. This is a really, really good unit. This is the combination. It's just the tiny little difference now that's going to spring them for the extra 10 or 15 yards versus the 3 or 4. I think they're closer than they have been all year, and I think they're going to get there.
Okay.
So that is one area that they do need to get better at.
What is that difference then from turning a 4 yard gain into a 40 yard gain?
Well, so the difference is when you leave your double team, right? So linebackers and defenses like to disable your effectiveness of double teams by bringing linebackers faster into gaps. TCU did that last year against us, right?
Mhm.
So if I'm an offensive lineman and my buddy next to me, we have to come together and double team, and the job is to move a defensive lineman back and make a linebacker pick a side. Okay, that's great. But when that linebacker comes fast, then I have to leave that double team now to take him. And now we no longer have the advantage of a double team. Now we're back to one-on-one. And so defenses going back to last year's TCU game, that was the blueprint. In fact, Illinois did it to us last year when they played us tough in Ann Arbor. This is how you neutralize effective double teaming. And or you can run some twists and some zones, but then we'll just zone block you and we can fix that too.
Mhm.
So for Michigan's offensive line to clean this up, they just have to be more, the basis is be more effective at the one-on-one blocks when teams start to bring linebackers faster to take away your double team. It's fundamentals, Ballas. It's getting your eyes and your hands and your feet where they belong and moving someone. And they're going to get there. We're just this close to popping some of these things.
Folks, this is why we pay him the big bucks right here. That's great analysis. So you said if I was an offensive lineman, you are an offensive lineman. You're always an offensive lineman. What's an offensive lineman? Always an offensive lineman,
Well,
right?
that's true.
Yeah.
I just play with a 7 or an 8 iron now instead of my hands and feet and my helmet. So
Understood. Yeah, and do that pretty damn well too. This guy is an athlete. May not look as much like it
yeah,
as he did back in the day, but he's still an athlete, and the guy can golf his ass off. So, all right, let's talk about Penn State and Ohio State here real quick. Did you watch that game by any chance, or were you
I watched a
preparing
pretty
for
good
your
chunk.
wedding?
Yeah, well, I had to travel yesterday down to Columbus.
Oh,
I was on the north side of Columbus, Ohio. A lot of red down there,
yeah.
and I did get a chance to watch a good chunk of that football game. Um, I was a little bit shocked at the ineptitude of the Penn State offense. I thought they were better than that. The Penn State defensive front is pretty good, and that Penn State defense, I thought, man, they're just holding this offense and holding this offense, and I thought, well, there's got to be some frustrations growing on that Penn State sideline because they held Ohio State's offense, to such low point averages so far into that game, and then finally the dam broke open, and they're letting Marvin Harrison Jr. running around free. You can only ask a defense to do so much. And so I'm watching that game and I'm like, all right, where are the problem guys for Michigan when we get to play these two teams? And offensively against the Penn State defensive front, how are we going to run that football against a pretty good defensive line? I think we can pass the football against that defense. And then defensively, Harrison Jr., you're going to have to put somebody on here, and you can't let that kid run free. They have a pretty good tight end. And then they've got another wide receiver out there. Did he play yesterday? And Jigba, did he play?
No,
I
no,
didn't see him.
no. It's Ibuka, I think, was the guy that was
Ibuka,
out.
yes. I can't remember the
And
name.
he was out. I think he got hurt, and he was out.
So
So they were out there without their number one running back, their number one receiver, and their number one defensive back, and they still pretty much throttled Penn State.
yeah. So Penn State, again, and as I said, Penn State. I'm like, listen, Franklin's still the head coach there, and that dude don't know how to win a top 10 game to save his life. That's just facts, people.
Yeah.
All right. In the course of his time there, he just doesn't know how to do it. I don't worry so much about beating Penn State. It's the Ohio State team, and clearly they have some really, really good players at certain positions. But again, Balas, I look at the quarterback at Ohio State and I say, he's good, but
Mm,
for Ohio, is he Ohio State good? He's
no,
nowhere close to the last 15 years of quarterbacks that Ohio State has had, and that's
no.
issuing all due respect possible. Ohio State's quarterbacking standards, as I've watched them play, has been so high and so good for so long. I go, all right, I think we can handle this quarterback,
Yeah,
but you got to handle his weapons and take
yeah.
care of them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you had James Franklin over there with that hat on that looked like he picked it up at a truck stop. Did you notice that?
I did see
I,
that.
I was like, what's going on here? Did this guy forget his hat's like Lou Whitaker forgetting his All-Star jersey back in the 80s and having to wear a replica? And I'm thinking James Franklin just stopped at Pilot and picked up this big, what all he was missing was a big dip and a Slim Jim. So, but he looked like, okay, here we go again, frankly, at the end of that game. And I knew they weren't going to win that game.
It's a familiar look. It's
It is.
James Franklin on the sideline against Michigan, Ohio State, and you name it, whoever else. Although you got to give the guy credit. He won a Rose Bowl. Didn't he win a Rose Bowl a couple of
He
years ago?
did. Yeah, they had that arm punt offense. And I will say this. Everybody talks about Drew Aller, and they were comparing him to J.J. McCarthy. Drew Aller is no J.J. McCarthy.
No,
It's not even
no,
close.
no,
They were
no.
dinking and dunking and doing the Cade McNamara offense, and because
Yeah.
that's what they have, that ain't going to fly against Michigan. And that's why, in my opinion, I picked Michigan to lose that game before the season. You picked an undefeated season. To me, Michigan has a great chance to go into Happy Valley and win that game. Now, I think Penn State will bring it defensively. I think that would be better than Michigan State was at finishing plays. And but it's hard not to look ahead, man, when your schedule is tomato can, tomato can, tomato can, tomato can. That's the one I'm looking at. All due respect to Purdue, right?
Well, correct. There's no doubt
Yeah.
about it. And I was just talking this morning on the way back home. We were talking about the balance of Michigan's schedule and the playoffs. You think about the playoff mentality really starts at Penn State, right?
Yep.
This Michigan team has pretty lofty goals. I think we all know what the goals are, and you have to go win that football game. And if you don't, you just maybe eliminated your chances of doing so. Not entirely, but greatly reduced. It's playoff mentality, and I think this Michigan team will be up to the task. Of course, Penn State's loud, but the football field is still the same length and still the same width. It has different colors in the end zones. Outside the noise, which Michigan and Coach Harbaugh in the last 2 years has proven that these teams can go on the road and suck in the environment and take it in as their own and figure out a way to win. I think we win that game. I absolutely think we win that game.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting. So, all right, let's talk about. Well, first things first. As an offensive lineman, did you ever get into a scuffle with a guy and then blindside him from behind and then jump on him with your helmet and hit him in the back of the head?
Certainly not in a game. No,
Okay.
not even in practice. Because boy, that's dirty pool even in practice. We got in a lot of fights in practice, Ballas, and a lot of them back in the day. But we never did anything like that. So no.
Yeah, so that it got a little chippy there at the end, and probably not unexpected if you're getting your butt kicked like they were. And but there's no excuse for that. There's no place
Well,
for it.
you
Come on,
gotta
just say it.
Yeah, you can't do that. You just
Right.
can't do that. It's out of line. You know, they threw the kid out as they should. In Michigan State, you know, the frustrations, and certainly it makes sense, right, from a rivalry point of view. You're getting embarrassed out there, and there's plenty of personal fouls. You know, I think they had two or three in a row on one series there in the second half, and we're just literally walking down the field as they're marching off penalty
Yes.
yardage, and so it's like, okay, this is, you know, at this point I'm watching as a Michigan fan. I'm like, all right, how long are our guys going to stay in here before some stupid stuff really happens and we got guys starting to get hurt? But we got out of there without major injuries, so that's good. But you know, it's unfortunate, but not all that surprising.
Yeah. Thoughts on scoring a touchdown with 8 seconds left with your eighth stringers?
No issues, no
Yep.
issues. Those kids are out there playing. They work just as hard as everybody else. They've been showing up for weightlifting since January whatever, and they've been grinding and doing everything that's been asked of them. You put them on the field in that situation, and you're calling base offense, and you let them score and you let them play the game. If Michigan State or anybody else doesn't like it, you stop it. It's not like Harbaugh left JJ in there and the starters in there to the end of the game. These were the backup kids, and in some cases, the backup to the backup kids, and you got to let them play.
Yeah, and in some cases, the backup to the backup to the backup. I remember when Mark D'Antonio hurried to the line to run one more play to score a touchdown in a 35-11 win, I think it
Yep,
was.
I remember
So,
it. Yep,
yeah, it's like now that's different. If you're hurrying to the line to run
yep.
up the score, then you're a dick.
I
With all
remember
due-
that. I
yeah,
remember that, and it was real cute, and he was laughing, and everything was funny
mhm,
about it. I remember it.
yeah.
It was
Now
gasoline.
he was supposed to be the guy that gave the secret game plan for this game. I don't think they showed him once, did they, on TV? I was watching the
It's
replay copy.
come on, Coach D'Antonio needs to take his 4.3 million that he got and just go back to
Stole.
fundraising. Come on.
Yeah, that he stole. So, yeah, he's not. He apparently he's not the miracle worker, which we kind of knew after they kicked his butt the last 2 years that they played him. So, but the
Yeah.
fan base was excited about it, and hopefully he had a front row seat to that. And
Well,
we hope he
so
enjoyed that, Mark.
true story, Balas, and I think you know this. Harlan was a teammate of mine in New England Patriots.
Great guy.
Great guy. I feel bad for Coach Barnett there and Harlan because you can tell. I mean, he loves Michigan State. He wants to have success. I think he had probably had hopes that he could do something with this team and maybe get a chance to retain a permanent job as head coach. I feel bad for him, just because of my connection. And let me be clear, I don't talk with Harlan at all. I mean, we were teammates on an NFL team 30 years ago, but I still have respect for him because he was a good guy then. I think he's a good guy now. So that's the only part of me that's like, yeah, that kind of sucks, but it's football. And as he said afterwards, it is what it is. We got our butts kicked.
Yeah, and he does not embrace the hatred. And to his credit, and I posted this today, I said he seems like a stand-up guy. I said he didn't make any excuses. He said, yeah, they of course you had the narrative, from all these people about, oh my God, your signals, whatever will tell you do. And they tried to keep that alive. And he said, no, man, we're not making any excuses. Guess what I did? I had the quarterback come over to the
Yeah.
line and give the signal, and then we went out and we played. And so all that talk about how, for the health and safety of our kids, we were considering not playing this game. That's just a lot
Hey,
of
by the
shit.
way, where did that come from? Whose idea was it to maybe not play this game for the health and safety of the
I
most
don't
violent
know.
game played outside of MMA,
I
the most
know.
violent team sport played out there? Well, maybe hockey's pretty doggone violent
Yeah,
too.
it is. Yeah, it
But I'm
is.
like, really? You guys are gonna because it's like really. I mean, you can figure out someone's signals halfway through the game if you really try. I mean, this is
Yeah,
nothing new for people that don't know what life on a sideline is like and everything goes on in a football game. So you could just by if your staff is any good, you're doing your scouting, the set of plays are going to run out of certain formations. You can narrow it down within a few options based
yeah,
on the way they line up.
yeah.
So let's just hit the brakes a little bit on the hyperbole surrounding this sign stealing stuff. It's
Yes.
ridiculous.
They were chagrined though at the talk. It's interesting because the Big Ten called them, the week of the game and said, "Hey, protect your signals because we are investigating that Michigan might have gotten them illegally." Now, here's the thing. Uh,
Hey, protect your signals. And by the way, here's a news flash. You're supposed to protect your signals all the time. If
Absolutely.
you're coaching football from little kids all the way up to the NFL, you should change up your stuff on the
Yes.
field because good opponents are going to figure you out. And if you don't have dummy calls, change ups, and false flags out there, you are the dumbass.
You are the dumbass. I was going to say dummy, but he said dumbass. He went full dumbass on me. That's fantastic. All right, but let's talk about the elephant in the room here and the sign stealing thing. And what it sounds like, Skene, is that okay? You have this staffer. He's an analyst and he's an elite military reconnaissance guy, right? So you can have him on the sidelines and you can break down signals. There's nothing illegal about that. And you've got these outlets now watching him pacing. They said, "Ooh, he's pacing the sidelines." I'm like, good. Everybody else does too. Now, the gray area is, say he was at a couple of games or going on and part of this elite scouting vast network of scouts where Michigan coaches are at games and videotaping sidelines and stuff like that. That's an issue. However, what if he's got some friends out there that say, "Hey, I'm at the Ohio State game. I am not there on your dime, but I'm here. And I'm in the stands with 100,000 other people, and he's got these buddies." In the rule book, I don't think there's anything that says you can't do that. So that's a gray area. But does that bother you?
That's probably where the line is, right, Balas?
Yeah.
So in your scenario there,
Right.
if I go watch a certain football game and my buddy Mark Staten, who's now the tight end coach at Toledo, if I were to go watch, a Ball State play or something, and I just said, "Hey, watch this game here," and by the way, I noticed that they like to do this. Is that an NCAA violation?
No,
Well,
but what if
I'm not on the Toledo staff, but Mark is,
no,
right?
but what if you're videotaping the sideline and you're
Sending
saying
it to him?
and you're writing things down? Would you have an issue with that? And there's nothing, I don't think, in the rule book specifically that says you can't accept things like that. There are 100,000 fans in the stadium. What's to prevent a kid? And I'm not justifying, and this is a hypothetical, right?
Yeah.
But what's to prevent somebody from, hey, videotaping sidelines and sending it to Michigan coach and say, "Hey, look, this is a videotape of the entire game of the sidelines." If you're a coach, do you delete that? Do you say, "No, we can't do that"?
So this is where the rubber's
Right.
meeting the road in this topic. So the right thing to do is to say, you know what, I'm not supposed to have this content. Delete. That's according to the rule. That's the right thing to do.
Is it? No, I don't think it is. I don't think there's any rule against that.
Well, this is I'm saying I don't know what the rule is,
Right.
Val. Where is the
The
rule
rule
stop?
is the staffer.
If there's a rule against it, then the right thing to do is to delete it. If
Right.
there's no rule against it, then okay.
Yeah. See, because that's where it comes into play and that's what Dan Wetzel wrote. And this is not my narrative. I want to be clear. This is a national narrative from a national writer saying, "Hey, what's to prevent, if you're not sending staffers to games and, for example, and how are you going to do that anyway, right? If you've got somebody.
Harbaugh is not sending Michigan staffers to away games. That would be a different issue. And if that comes out, then that is a different issue.
Right, exactly. So that's why there's so much, everybody's rushing to judgment here. We need to see the story. Now, if it's the case where this Connor Stallions was at a game or two or something like that, then he should be suspended accordingly and punished accordingly. There was a Baylor coach that 5 years ago, I think it was the offensive coordinator, was on the sidelines, the other sidelines of a game that of an upcoming opponent, and he got a half game suspension. So maybe Connor Stallions should be suspended a half game if that were the case, right? But to sit there and imply that there's this vast network, and just because Michigan is really good at stealing signals is irresponsible. If they are found to be guilty, then absolutely, there should be ramifications for it.
There should be. I mean, there's no doubt about that. We should not be cheating. No one should be cheating.
Right.
But I want to go back to the signals themselves, Balas. Having been there and done that, I mean, if you have a set of signals, and like I said earlier, if you're not changing them, then you're a dumbass as a football coach and a football staff.
Yep.
It's not that hard to flip a few things around and throw your opponent entirely off. It's just not that hard.
And I think Michigan did that with Ohio State, Skene, not to interrupt you. Yes.
It's just not. If you have a numbering system or an alphanumeric system or a set of words and codes that have R's for the right and L's for the left, you just flip all that stuff, make a change during the week, you practice it, you go out and you play on Saturday, and everybody's happy. That's all you got to do. And if anybody tells me, "Oh, it's not that easy. Oh, you can't. You don't. The kids don't have time." BS. All these kids out there are smart enough to do this stuff. And the reason I know this is because a dumb guy like me all those years ago figured it out. So don't tell me it can't be done.
You're not dumb. You're a Michigan grad. And here's the funny part about it, though, is that they said somebody told me that they were like on the sidelines for like took 2 plays and a guy would point to his boot and they knew a boot was coming. It's like, okay, you don't want to dumb it down that much. And another thing, Skene, like you always say, freaking huddle up if you're worried about it,
Yeah,
right? And have your quarterback call the play at the damn line of scrimmage.
Yeah, huddle up, go to the line of scrimmage with at least 2, if not 4 or 6 or more. Balas, the system we ran back in the day with Coach Moeller and Cam Cameron and Les Miles is running the offense. We could run our entire offense at the line of scrimmage if we wanted to. We used a set of numbers and colors and cadence, and we could do the whole thing at the line of scrimmage. It was all check with me. And and we learned it in practice because you want to get faster reps in practice. You would just say, hey, just go to the line of scrimmage. It's check with me on 1. And we would, and Elvis would bark out a number and a color, and we knew what play we were going to run.
Did
and
you change them every week?
Well, all you got to do is just, if you want to throw the defense off, you just go, easy, 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 kill, 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 opposite. Well, what does opposite mean? No one, we knew what opposite meant. And sometimes opposite was hot and sometimes opposite was cold. This is how you throw off your defensive front, right? So it's just not that complicated. And I'll never not believe that.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. So it does seem that there are some, I don't care what anybody says, it does seem that the NCAA has an erection for Jim Harbaugh to be. Am I wrong? It just seems to me
that feels like it. Right? we got the cheeseburger, and now 1 phone call was made, or 2 phone calls allegedly made to say, hey, these guys are cheating, and the NCAA just takes all of its weaponry and aims it at Jim Harbaugh. And I'm saying this now, and I see some national guys are now saying it. If Harbaugh gets an NFL offer at the end of this thing, and I would not blame him for saying, see you later, college show. Because it's kind of what it feels like for him, right? And so go to the NFL where he has some regulations and some rules and an environment where it's a fair playing field, and off you go. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope Michigan finds a way to keep him. But if I were him, I would enjoy every moment as I could with this particular football team and in the moment. And then at the end of the season, I'd look around and go, all right, what are my options here?
Once again, it's a big if. And speaking to somebody, this is secondhand, who spoke to an NFL GM recently. He said NFL GMs still don't want Jim Harbaugh. It would have to be an owner that came up and said, but there are owners up there that might just say, I want to win. And Jim Harbaugh is a winner. You can argue with whatever the hell you want to argue. This guy is a winning football coach.
Hey, listen, I think it's pretty much public knowledge. Jim Harbaugh may not be the most warm and fuzzy guy that you want to have over for Thanksgiving. But he's not a dirtbag, and he's not a gross individual. I think he's a family man. He's pretty clear about his morals and his values.
Yep.
And although he may not kiss your ass and tell you how warm and fuzzy you want to hear, but he's going to win. And so I think an NFL owner would find that attractive enough to give him a shot. He's a demanding guy. And here's a newsflash. His old college football coach was the same one I had, and much of the same staff. They were all very, very demanding people. And you may not have understood it at the time, and that this was an awfully harsh environment. And then you grow up a little bit and you go, you know what, doggone, I'm glad he was that demanding of me, because I figured out how to do things that were the hard way.
Yep, there you have it. He's Doug Skene. Skene, we will enjoy the bye week. We're still going to do one on Sunday and look back at some hot topics. So I'm looking forward to that. Enjoy your bye week. I'm sorry that the golf clubs are probably in the garage now, but you got some Florida trips coming up in the winter, right?
Well, I'm trying to figure it out where to go warm and get away from the winter. But Balas, this year, I'm trying to embrace the fall and embrace the winter, our lovely seasons here in Michigan. And so maybe a little more cross-country skiing this year. Hopefully we get some good snow, and then we'll be back golfing before you know it.
Those better be some strong damn skis. That's all I got to say. So, he's Doug Skene, our 5-time Big Ten champion. Thanks, Skene. We will talk to you next week.
All right, go blue.